The metal floor of Maintenance Bay 7 was cold beneath Kate Murphy's worn boots. She'd been on her feet for 12 hours straight, and her back ached something fierce. Oil and grease stained her hands no matter how hard she scrubbed them, dark crescents permanently lodged under her fingernails. Kate grabbed an old rag and wiped her palms one more time, knowing it wouldn't make much difference. Around her, the massive space station hummed with life. Ships came and went, their engines roaring or purring depending on how well she'd tuned them. Kate took pride in her work. Every vessel that left this bay left perfect, even if nobody seemed to notice or care. Her crewmates were different. Most of them came for money, doing their mandatory service rotations, before heading back to comfortable lives on their family estates. They treated the maintenance bay like a joke, like slumming it with the working class. Kate had watched them fumble with basic tools, laugh at procedures, and spend more time on their personal devices than actually working. Danny walked over, that familiar smirk already spreading across his face. He was her supervisor, though Kate did most of the real work while he signed off on reports. He'd gotten the position through family connections, not skill. "Hey Kate, you got plans tonight?" Danny asked, loud enough that the others could hear. Kate glanced up from the engine part she was inspecting. "Same as always. Sleep." "No way, not tonight." Danny grinned wider. "There's a mandatory social mixer-up in the grand ballroom. Station commander wants all departments mingling, building morale or whatever." Kate's stomach sank. She hated those events. Everyone dressed up fancy while she stood in the corner, trying not to touch anything with her perpetually dirty hands. "Even better," Danny continued, his voice dripping with fake enthusiasm, "we found you a date. Someone special from the upper decks." The other crewmates started snickering. Kate felt her face flush hot. They were messing with her again, setting her up for embarrassment. It happened every few months. They'd convince her to join some social event, then watch her squirm when she didn't fit in with the polished, educated crowd. But here's the thing about loneliness, it makes you do stupid things. Kate lived alone in a tiny quarters unit, ate meals by herself, and spent her free time reading technical manuals. The last real conversation she'd had was 3 weeks ago with a visiting cargo pilot. She was tired of being alone. "Fine," Kate heard herself say. "I'll go." Danny's eyebrows shot up. He'd expected her to refuse. "Seriously? Great. Be there at 8. Or something nice." Kate didn't own anything nice. After her shift ended, she scrubbed herself raw in the shower, watching dark water circle the drain. She dug through her locker and found nothing but work clothes and old shirts. Finally, she stopped by the station's lost and found office, where unclaimed items eventually became free for anyone who needed them. The dress was blue, simple, and only slightly too big. Would have to work. At 7:55, Kate stood outside the grand ballroom, smoothing down the borrowed fabric. Through the transparent doors she could see the glittering crowd inside. Officers in dress uniforms with polished medals. Civilians in expensive clothes that probably cost more than Kate made in a month. Everyone looked like they belonged. She pushed through the doors. The ballroom was huge, with high ceilings and soft music playing from somewhere Kate couldn't see. Round tables dotted the space, covered in white cloth and decorated with flowers. People laughed and chatted, holding delicate glasses filled with colorful drinks. Kate spotted Danny and the others across the room. They were already watching her, their phones out and recording. Heat crawled up her neck. This was a mistake. She should leave. But then she saw her table number on a small card Danny had given her earlier. Table 17, tucked in a quieter corner away from the main crowd. At least she wouldn't be center stage for whatever humiliation they'd planned. Kate walked over, her boots feeling clumsy against the smooth floor. A woman sat at the table, her silver hair cut short and neat. She wore simple civilian clothes, nothing flashy, just dark pants and a plain shirt. She was focused on a data pad, reading something that made her frown in concentration. Kate cleared her throat. "Excuse me, is this table 17? The woman looked up, and Kate found herself staring into the sharpest gray eyes she'd ever seen. There was intelligence there and something else. Weariness maybe, or the weight of experience. "You must be Kate," the woman said, standing up and extending her hand. Her voice was warm, genuine. "I'm Beck. It's a pleasure to meet you." Kate shook her hand, surprised by the firm grip and the calluses she felt there. Working hands like her own. "Please sit down," Beck said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Kate sat, waiting for the judgment. Waiting for Beck to notice her rough hands, her borrowed dress, the way she didn't quite fit in this sparkling world. Instead, Beck smiled and said, "So, I hear you work in maintenance. What kind of ships do you specialize in? It was a real question. Not polite small talk, but genuine curiosity. Kate blinked, caught off guard. Fusion drives mostly, Kate answered carefully. And hull integrity systems. Beck's eyes lit up. Fascinating. I've always wondered about the stress tolerances on the new coalition cruisers. Do they really handle the pressure differentials as well as the specs claim? And just like that, they were talking. Really talking. For the first time in years, someone was actually listening to Kate Murphy. Kate found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't expected. Beck wasn't like the other people at these events who asked polite questions then glazed over when you actually answered. When Kate explained the fusion drive problem she'd solved last week, Beck leaned forward, asking follow-up questions that showed she actually understood what Kate was talking about. The plasma flow was unstable, Kate said, using her hands to demonstrate. Everyone wanted to replace the entire manifold assembly, but I knew it was just the regulator valves. Cost the station 50 credits instead of 50,000. Beck nodded slowly. That kind of thinking saves lives out in deep space. When you're 3 weeks from the nearest station and something breaks, you can't just order new parts. There was something in the way Beck said it. Not theoretical but lived experience. Kate studied her date more carefully. Those weren't just any calluses on Beck's hands. They were specific marks, the kind you got from working with certain tools in zero-gravity environments. And that scar on her temple, faded but visible, looked like it came from something serious. You've spent time on ships, Kate said. It wasn't a question. Beck smiled a bit sadly. More than I care to count. Years and years out there in the black, learning that every decision matters. That the difference between coming home and floating dead in space often comes down to someone like you catching a problem nobody else saw. A server came by with drinks. Beck ordered whiskey neat and raised an eyebrow at Kate. Same, Kate said, feeling bold. When the drinks arrived, Beck lifted her glass. To those who keep the ships flying. The real heroes nobody talks about. They clinked glasses. The whiskey burned going down, but it was good burn, warming Kate from the inside. Across the ballroom, Danny was hunched over his phone with the others. Kate could see them pointing, whispering. Something was wrong with their little joke and they couldn't figure out what. They kept glancing at Beck, then back at their phones, confused expressions growing deeper. Kate didn't care. For once, she was having actual fun. Tell me something, Beck said. What got you into this work? Most people don't wake up dreaming about fusion manifolds. Kate laughed. My dad was a cargo hauler. Small independent operation, one beat-up ship that broke down more than it ran. I grew up in the engine room, handing him tools, learning how everything worked. He always said machines were honest. They don't lie, don't play games. You treat them right, they treat you right. Smart man, Beck said quietly. He died when his ship's life support failed, Kate continued, surprising herself. She never talked about this. I was 16. The failure happened because some corporate mechanic cut corners, didn't check the backups properly. I promised myself I'd never let that happen on my watch. Every ship I touch gets checked and double-checked. Beck reached across the table and squeezed Kate's hand. Just for a moment, but it meant something. They talked for hours. Beck shared stories about the loneliness of deep space, those long months between stars where you had nothing but your thoughts and the hum of the engines. She spoke about impossible decisions, about times when every choice seemed wrong but you had to pick one anyway. About watching stars being born in distant nebulas and feeling very small and very grateful all at once. Kate told her about the satisfaction of fixing something everyone else had given up on. About the particular sound a perfectly tuned engine makes. About finding beauty in the mathematics of orbital mechanics. Most people think it's boring, Kate admitted. Numbers and grease and crawling through tight spaces. Those people are idiots, Beck said flatly, and Kate burst out laughing. A young officer in a crisp uniform approached their table, looking nervous. He was maybe 22, fresh-faced and uncertain. Excuse me, ma'am, I need to. Beck raised one finger, still looking at Kate, not even glancing at the officer. Her voice stayed warm but carried an edge of absolute authority. Unless someone is actively dying or a ship is currently exploding, I am off duty. You understand? The officer went pale. His hand snapped up in a salute so automatic it had to be drilled into muscle memory. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. He practically ran away. Kate's stomach dropped. That wasn't how civilians talked to officers. That wasn't how officers responded to civilians. Her mind raced back through the conversation, picking up clues she'd missed. The way Beck spoke about command decisions. The scars. The absolute confidence in her voice when she gave that order. Who are you? Kate asked quietly. Really? Beck set down her whiskey glass. She looked Kate straight in the eyes, and for the first time that evening, Kate saw something like regret there. "I should have told you from the start," Beck said. "But you were talking about your work with such genuine passion, and I didn't want that to change. Didn't want you to start acting different around me." She reached into her pocket and pulled out an identification card, sliding it across the table. Kate picked it up with shaking hands. "Admiral Rebecca Hayes, Commander, 3rd Fleet. Decorated veteran of the Kryn Border Wars. Holder of the Coalition Star of Valor." Kate looked up at the woman across from her. Not just any admiral. The Admiral Hayes. The legend. The woman who'd held off an entire enemy fleet with damaged ships and sheer determination. The strategist every military academy studied. And she'd just spent 3 hours talking to Kate Murphy like they were equals. Kate stared at the identification card, her thumb tracing over the official coalition seal. Admiral Rebecca Hayes. The name alone carried weight across every inhabited system. This was the woman who'd become a living legend 3 years ago during the Kryn Border Wars. "I don't understand," Kate said, setting the card down carefully. "Why are you here? At a random station mixer?" Beck sighed, running her hand through her silver hair. "My aide, Lieutenant Brooks, ambushed me last week. Said I was becoming too isolated, too focused on duty. She insisted I attend this mixer before the big procurement conference next week. Said it would help me remember what normal life looks like." Beck's mouth twisted into a bitter smile. "I suspect she also thought pairing me with someone from maintenance would humble me somehow. Teach me to appreciate the little people or some nonsense like that." The pieces clicked together in Kate's mind. "They set us both up." "What do you mean?" Kate gestured across the ballroom where Danny and his friends were huddled together, their phones out, looking increasingly panicked. "My supervisor and his buddies thought it would be hilarious to send the greasy mechanic on a date with someone important. They wanted to watch me embarrass myself. Probably planned to post it all over social media." Beck's expression changed. The warmth drained from her face, replaced by something cold and dangerous. It was the look of someone who'd commanded thousands of people in life-or-death situations. Kate suddenly understood how this woman had faced down an enemy armada without flinching. "I see," Beck said, her voice quiet but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut steel. Kate watched her date's jaw tighten, saw her eyes narrow as she looked across the ballroom at Danny's group. For a moment, Kate thought Beck might actually march over there and tear into them. The Admiral looked like she was calculating exactly how to destroy them. "Don't," Kate said quickly. "They're not worth it." Beck turned back to her, and the cold expression softened slightly. "They hurt you. Made you feel less than what you are." "Yeah, well, that's nothing new." Kate shrugged, trying to act like it didn't matter even though it did. "Story of my life." Beck was quiet for a long moment, studying Kate's face. Then she asked, "Would you like to leave? We can end this right now. Pretend tonight never happened. You can go back to your quarters and I'll go back to mine. No harm done." Kate's heart sank. Of course. Why would an admiral want to spend more time with someone like her? It had been nice while it lasted, but reality was crashing back in. "Or," Beck continued, and Kate looked up in surprise, "we can finish our evening. Not as Admiral Hayes and Chief Mechanic Murphy. Just as Beck and Kate. Two people who happen to enjoy each other's company. Your choice." Kate studied the woman across from her. Despite the rank, despite the legend, despite everything, Beck had spent hours talking to her like an equal. She'd asked real questions and given real answers. She'd toasted the people who keep ships flying. Her hands carried the same scars as Kate's own. "I'd like to stay," Kate said. The smile that spread across Beck's face was genuine and warm, reaching all the way to her eyes. "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." Music drifted across the ballroom, something slow and classical. Beck stood and extended her hand. "Dance with me?" "I'm not very good at dancing," Kate warned. "Neither am I. We'll figure it out together." They moved onto the dance floor. Beck's hand was steady on Kate's waist, her other hand holding Kate's gently but firmly. They swayed together, finding a rhythm that worked even if it wasn't perfectly in time with the music. The whispers started almost immediately. Kate heard them rippling through the crowd. "Is that Admiral Hayes? Who's she dancing with? Wait, isn't that the mechanic from Bay 7? People were staring now, no longer pretending not to notice. Someone must have spread the word because more guests turned to watch. Officers straightened their postures. Civilians whispered behind their hands. Across the room, Kate saw Danny's face go white. His friends looked like they might be sick. They just realized they tried to humiliate someone dancing with the most decorated officer in the coalition fleet. The videos they'd been recording suddenly became evidence of their own cruelty. Let them stare, Beck said quietly, pulling Kate a bit closer. I stopped caring what people thought about me a long time ago. Doesn't it bother you? Kate asked. Everyone watching? Only if it bothers you. Kate thought about it. A week ago she would have died from the attention. But right now, with Beck's steady presence and the knowledge that at least one person saw her as more than just a grease-stained mechanic, she found she didn't care much either. Why did you really agree to this tonight? Kate asked as they moved slowly across the floor. Someone like you could have anyone. Why show up for a blind date with a stranger? Beck was quiet for several steps. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. Do you know how many people speak honestly to an admiral? How many will tell me I'm wrong about something? Kate remembered correcting Beck earlier about the fusion drive specifications. She'd done it without thinking, just sharing what she knew. When you explained that plasma flow problem, Beck continued, you corrected my understanding. You didn't hesitate or sugarcoat it to protect my feelings. You didn't defer to my rank or try to flatter me. You just taught me something I didn't know. She met Kate's eyes. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How lonely it gets when everyone treats you like you're untouchable. Kate understood that feeling more than Beck probably realized. Different sides of the same coin. Beck was isolated on a pedestal. Kate was invisible in the machinery. You mentioned earlier that you worked on a Kryn dreadnought, Beck said, changing the subject. The infinite theorem, right? Kate nodded, wondering where this was going. That ship saved my flagship during the Battle of the Outer Markers, Beck said quietly. We'd taken heavy damage. Our drives were crippled. Everyone said repairs would take weeks, that we'd have to abandon the position. But someone got that captured dreadnought combat ready in 36 hours. Brought it screaming into the fight when we needed it most. Beck's eyes searched Kate's face. That was you, wasn't it? Kate's breath caught. The Battle of the Outer Markers. She remembered that job vividly. 36 hours of hell, working non-stop on a half-destroyed enemy ship while the battle raged around them. Her hands had bled. She'd fallen asleep standing up twice. But she'd gotten those drives running. Yeah, Kate said quietly. That was me. Beck's hand tightened on hers. You saved 800 lives that day. My crew included. Before Kate could respond, a sharp beeping cut through the music. Beck's face darkened as she pulled out a communication device. She read the message, her expression growing grim. What is it? Kate asked. Emergency in Hangar 3. Beck looked up, conflict clear in her eyes. I have to go. Then let's go, Kate said. They practically ran through the station corridors, their fancy evening forgotten. Other people pressed against the walls to let Admiral Hayes pass. Kate struggled to keep up in her borrowed dress and boots that weren't made for running. They burst into Hangar 3 to find complete chaos. At least 30 people crowded around a sleek diplomatic vessel. Engineers shouted at each other, waving data pads and gesturing wildly. Station officials in their pressed uniforms stood to the side, looking panicked. The ship itself sat dark and dead, its running lights off, a bad sign for any vessel. And right in the middle of it all stood Danny and his whole crew from Maintenance Bay 7, looking confused and useless. The moment Admiral Hayes walked through the hangar doors, every voice cut off. The sudden silence was deafening. 30 pairs of eyes turned to stare at Beck, and then at Kate standing beside her in her rumpled dress. Danny's face went from confused to white as a sheet. He recognized what this meant. His little joke had just become a catastrophe. Status, Beck commanded, her voice ringing with absolute authority. A tall man in a senior engineer's uniform stepped forward. His name badge read Phillips, Chief Systems Engineer. He was probably in his 50s, with gray at his temples and the confident posture of someone used to being the smartest person in the room. Admiral Hayes, Phillips said with a respectful nod. We have a critical situation. This diplomatic vessel is scheduled to transport coalition peace envoys to the Kryn homeworld at 0800 tomorrow. The mission is essential. These talks could end 3 years of war. I'm aware of the mission's importance, Beck said coldly. What happened? Phillips gestured to the ship. Catastrophic failure of the quantum flux manifold. The entire assembly collapsed during final pre-flight checks. We're looking at a complete system replacement. Timeline? Beck asked. Minimum 3 weeks to get the parts and install them properly. Phillips spread his hands helplessly. I'm sorry, Admiral, but there's no way to fix this in time. The mission will have to be scrubbed. We'll need to reschedule the peace talks, assuming the Kryn are willing to wait. A woman in a diplomatic uniform made a choking sound. They won't wait. You know how fragile these negotiations are. If we miss this window, the hardliners on their side will use it as proof we're not serious about peace. We'll be back to shooting at each other within a month. Kate had been quiet, listening. But something Phillips said didn't sound right. She moved closer to the ship, her practiced eye scanning the visible damage. The other engineers parted to let her through, though some looked confused about why a woman in a dress was approaching their crisis. "May I?" Kate asked, gesturing to the access panel. Phillips frowned. "I'm sorry, but this is a restricted area. Only certified engineers." "She's with me," Beck said flatly. "Continue, Kate." Kate knelt down, not caring about the dress anymore. She popped the access panel and leaned in, her hands moving with practiced confidence. She could smell the burnt circuits, see the scorch marks on the manifold housing. Her mind was already working through the problem, seeing possibilities others would miss. After 2 minutes of examination, Kate stood up and wiped her hands on her dress. "It can be bypassed," she said clearly. The hangar erupted. Engineers started talking all at once, most of them dismissive. Phillips laughed, actually laughed. "That's impossible. The quantum flux manifold is integral to the entire drive system. You can't just bypass it." "Yes, you can," Kate said firmly. "You'll lose about 15% efficiency, but the ship will hold for the journey to Kryn space and back. It's a shorter route anyway. I can do it in 6 hours if I have a good team." Phillips' face reddened. "Young lady, I don't know who you are, but I've been engineering ships for 30 years. The tolerance margins alone would." Chief Mechanic Kate Murphy, Admiral Hayes' voice cut through the hangar like a blade through butter, is perhaps the finest drive specialist in Coalition space. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the metal floor. Beck stepped forward, her presence commanding every eye. "Chief Murphy maintained my entire fleet during the border wars. We operated for months with damaged ships, jury-rigged systems, and repairs that shouldn't have worked but did because of her expertise. We held the line when we were outnumbered 3-1, held together by hope and Kate Murphy's ingenuity." Phillips opened his mouth then closed it. "If Chief Murphy says this vessel can be repaired in 6 hours," Beck continued, her gray eyes sweeping across every person in the hangar, "then I believe her. Does anyone else have a better solution?" Nobody spoke. Danny looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Beck turned to the station commander, who'd been watching from the side. "Commander Willis, I'm requesting that Chief Mechanic Murphy be given operational command of this repair. Full authority over personnel and resources. Time is critical." Commander Willis looked between Beck, Kate, and the dead ship. He was a practical man who recognized when to trust expertise. "Granted. Chief Murphy, the repair is yours. Whatever you need." Kate's heart pounded. 6 hours. A supposedly impossible repair. The fate of peace talks riding on her shoulders. She looked at Beck, who gave her the smallest nod of confidence. "All right," Kate said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Here's what we're going to do." Kate took a deep breath and stepped fully into her role. She'd spent years being invisible, being dismissed, being treated like she didn't matter. Not anymore. "I need 3 teams," she called out, her voice carrying across the hangar. "Team 1, you're with me on the manifold bypass. Team 2, I need you recalibrating the power distribution network. Team 3, you're running diagnostics on every secondary system to make sure nothing else is about to fail." Engineers hesitated, looking at Phillips for confirmation. The senior engineer's jaw was tight, but he gave a stiff nod. Slowly, people began moving. "Not fast enough," Kate said sharply. "We have 6 hours, which means we actually have 5 because I want testing time. Move like you mean it." That got them going. Kate started pointing at specific people, assigning tasks based on a quick assessment of their skill levels. She'd been around enough engineers to know who actually knew their stuff and who just talked a good game. Danny and his maintenance crew stood off to the side, looking uncertain. Kate locked eyes with Danny. "You," she said. "Bay 7 crew. You're on coolant systems. I need every line flushed and checked. If there's contamination anywhere, I want to know about it." It was grunt work, the kind of job usually given to the newest, least experienced people. Danny's face reddened, but he nodded and gathered his team. They knew better than to argue with an admiral watching. Beck stepped up beside Kate, already rolling up her sleeves. Her nice civilian clothes were about to get destroyed and she clearly didn't care. "Where do you need me?" Beck asked. Kate looked at her, this legendary admiral, asking to take orders from a mechanic. "Can you handle a plasma torch?" "Been a while, but yeah." "Good. You're with me on the bypass assembly. It's delicate work." They dove in together. Kate's hands moved with practiced confidence, disconnecting burnt components and rerouting systems in ways that shouldn't work but would. She called out instructions and Beck followed them precisely, her movements careful and deliberate. "You've done this before," Kate observed as Beck made a perfect weld on a coupling joint. "Spent my first 10 years in the service working my way up from the bottom," Beck said, not looking away from her work. "Did a lot of repairs in my time. You don't forget the basics." Around them, the hangar buzzed with focused activity. Engineers crawled through access panels, ran diagnostic scans, and called out readings to each other. The initial chaos had transformed into organized purpose. Phillips stood watching for the first hour, his expression skeptical. But as Kate's plan took shape, as the impossible started becoming possible, his attitude shifted. He began helping, offering suggestions that Kate either accepted or politely dismissed based on whether they'd actually work. 3 hours in, Kate's back screamed with pain. Her hands were covered in burns and cuts. The borrowed dress was completely ruined, torn and stained beyond recognition. She didn't care. The work was all that mattered. Beck worked beside her the entire time, never complaining, never slowing down. When Kate needed a tool, Beck had it ready. When Kate's hands were too big to reach a tight space, Beck's smaller fingers could get there. They moved like a team that had worked together for years instead of hours. "Power coupling is green," someone called out. "Secondary systems all clear," another voice reported. "Coolant lines checked and flushed," Danny said quietly, staying well back from Kate and Beck. 5 hours and 45 minutes after they'd started, Kate made the final connection. Her hands shook as she closed the access panel and stepped back. "Fire it up," she said, her voice hoarse. The silence in the hangar was deafening. Every person there held their breath as the power came online. The ship's systems hummed to life, lights flickering on one by one. The diagnostic displays lit up green across the board. The drive spun up with a sound like distant thunder, building to a perfect, steady thrum that sang of properly balanced systems. "Perfect synchronization," Phillips said, staring at his readout in disbelief. "It's actually perfect." "How did you?" "Because I'm good at my job," Kate said simply. Beck clasped Kate's shoulder, her grip warm and proud. "Magnificent work, Chief." Commander Willis approached, looking relieved and impressed in equal measure. "Chief Murphy, the Coalition owes you a serious debt. We were looking at renewed war. You just saved countless lives. Name your reward." Kate's heart pounded. She looked at Beck, saw the warmth in those gray eyes, the respect and something more. "Permission to request a transfer, sir," Kate said clearly. "To the Third Fleet. I understand they need a new chief engineer." Beck's smile was immediate and genuine. "Granted," she said, her formal tone not quite hiding the happiness underneath. "Welcome aboard, Chief. When can you start?" "Give me a week to pack my things." Commander Willis nodded his approval. "Granted. The Third Fleet is lucky to have you." Beck's expression turned cold as she looked at Danny and his crew. They'd been standing in the corner, watching everything, understanding just how badly they'd miscalculated. As for those who thought a dedicated professional would make suitable entertainment for their cruel little joke, Kate touched Beck's arm gently. "They're not worth it, Admiral. Besides," she smiled, "I got the better end of this deal, didn't I?" Beck's expression softened. "I'd say we both did." The diplomatic vessel launched 12 hours later, right on schedule. Beck and Kate stood on the observation deck, watching it disappear into the jump point that would take it to Kryn space. "So," Beck said casually, though her eyes were warm, "about that date. I don't think we finished it properly." "No," Kate agreed. "We got a bit sidetracked. Would you like to try again? Somewhere with maybe less political pressure and fewer engine failures." Kate laughed, the sound free and genuine. "I'd like that a lot. Though I should warn you, Admiral. Dates with me have a tendency to involve unexpected engine repairs. It seems to be a pattern." Beck's smile reached her eyes. "Chief Murphy, I'm absolutely counting on it." Behind them, through the observation deck window, Danny and the remaining Bay 7 crew watched in stunned silence. The mechanic they tried to humiliate was walking away with the most respected admiral in the fleet, equals in every way that truly mattered. Kate had spent years being invisible. Not anymore. The end. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.